The rust-speckled hull of HMS Ironwill groaned as it drifted through the asteroid belt at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy. Once a proud vessel at the forefront of humanity's exploration, it now served as little more than a floating classroom for cadets no one expected much from. Captain Elena Park stood on the bridge, her straight posture belying the weight of disappointment that had settled on her shoulders over the past 5 years. "Status report, Lieutenant Ramos." She called, her voice crisp despite the early hour. Lieutenant Sofia Ramos, tactical officer, with hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her features, glanced up from her console. "All systems nominal, Captain, though nominal on the Ironwill means functioning at 60% capacity at best." Elena ignored the hint of sarcasm. She'd grown accustomed to the crew's thinly veiled frustration. After all, none of them had chosen this assignment. The Ironwill was where careers came to die, where officers with black marks on their records were sent to serve out their remaining time before an inevitable dishonorable discharge or quiet retirement. Her own assignment to this vessel had come after she'd questioned a superior's judgment during a skirmish with pirates near the Orion Nebula. She'd been right, the superior's strategy would have resulted in civilian casualties. But being right didn't matter when you embarrassed an admiral with political connections. "Captain, incoming transmission from command," announced Communications Officer Talia Wright, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Elena straightened her already perfect posture. "On screen." Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared before them, his expression as stern as ever. "Captain Park, the treaty signing with the Draken Federation is scheduled for 800 hours tomorrow. Your presence is requested, though merely as a formality." "Of course, Admiral," Elena replied, keeping her tone neutral despite the slight. The Ironwill would be present but inconsequential, like an awkward relative invited to a wedding out of obligation. "Remember your place, Captain. The Ironwill is to remain at the periphery during the ceremony. This treaty represents years of delicate negotiation, and we can't afford any incidents." The unspoken accusation hung in the air. Elena's jaw tightened. "Understood, Admiral. We'll maintain our assigned position." The screen went dark before she could say more. "Well, that was refreshing," muttered Samuel Gear, the ship's chief engineer. He'd entered the bridge silently during the transmission, his perpetually oil-stained hands clutching a datapad. "Always nice to be reminded of our irrelevance." Elena turned to him, a hint of a smile softening her features. "Got something for me, Gear." The Korean-American engineer was the closest thing she had to a friend aboard the Ironwill. Like her, he'd been relegated to this assignment after a controversy in his case, unauthorized modifications to a starship's propulsion system that, while brilliant, violated 17 different regulations. "Just the usual complaints," he said, handing her the datapad. "Coolant system is leaking again. Life support on Deck C is fluctuating. Oh, and the mess hall replicator is producing everything with a distinct taste of battery acid." "Prioritize life support," Elena said. "The crew can deal with bad coffee for another day." "Aye, Captain." Gear lingered, fidgeting with a pocket multi-tool. "There's something else. Something I've been working on in my spare time." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Something that would violate regulations?" "Almost certainly," he admitted with a grin that suggested he took particular pride in that fact. "But it might just save our lives someday." "Show me after the shift," she decided. "For now, make sure this ship doesn't fall apart before tomorrow's ceremony." As Gear left, Elena turned to stare out at the vastness of space. Stars glittered against the darkness, indifferent to the political machinations of those who traveled among them. Somewhere out there, the Draken Federation was preparing for tomorrow's treaty, signing a historic occasion meant to end centuries of tension between their species. "Ensign Ortiz." Elena called to her helmsman, "Plot a course to the treaty coordinates. Let's make sure we arrive with time to spare." Rafael Ortiz, a prodigy pilot whose tendency to disobey flight patterns had landed him on the Ironwill, nodded. "Course plotted, Captain. ETA 16 hours. Lieutenant Ramos, run a diagnostic on our weapon systems," Elena added. When Ramos gave her a questioning look, she explained, "Just a precaution. I doubt the brass would appreciate us showing up to a peace treaty with malfunctioning weapons." As the bridge crew set about their tasks, Elena couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something about this treaty signing felt wrong, though she couldn't articulate why. Perhaps it was just paranoia, born from years of being sidelined, of watching her once promising career wither away on this forgotten vessel. Or perhaps it was something more. Later that evening, Elena made her way to engineering, where Gear had promised to show her his secret project. The engineering deck was a maze of pipes, conduits, and machinery, all humming with barely contained energy. Unlike the rest of the ship, which carried an air of neglect, Gear had managed to keep engineering in relatively good condition through sheer force of will and creative problem-solving. "Captain on deck." Someone called, though the engineers barely looked up from their work. Protocol had grown lax aboard the Iron Will, another sign of their collective fall from grace. Gear emerged from behind a massive power converter, wiping his hands on a rag that seemed to spread grease rather than remove it. "Captain, right on time. Follow me." He led her to a sealed door at the back of engineering, a storage room, according to the ship's schematics. When the door slid open, however, Elena realized it was anything but. The room was filled with equipment she didn't recognize, components that certainly weren't standard issue, and interfaces that glowed with an eerily beautiful blue light. At the center stood what appeared to be a miniature reactor, its core pulsing with energy. "What am I looking at, Gear?" she asked, torn between admiration and alarm. "The future," he replied, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "Or at least our future. I call it the resonance module." Elena circled the device cautiously. "And what does this resonance module do?" "In simple terms, it can match and disrupt the frequency of energy shields." Gear's eyes gleamed with excitement. "More than that, it can adapt our own shields to become virtually impenetrable against conventional weapons." "This is highly irregular," Elena said carefully. "It's highly illegal," Gear corrected. "I've been siphoning power and repurposing spare parts for months. If Command found out, we'd both be court-martialed." Elena frowned. "Then why show me?" Gear's expression turned serious. "Because I don't trust the Drakens. And because this ship, this crew, deserves better than to be a footnote in someone else's story." For a moment, Elena was silent, weighing her options. The responsible course of action would be to report this unauthorized modification immediately. But then again, the responsible course had earned her nothing but demotion and disgrace. "How long would it take to integrate this into our systems?" she asked finally. Gear's grin returned. "That's the beauty of it, Captain. It already is integrated. I just need your authorization to activate it." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "You installed an experimental unauthorized technology throughout my ship without informing me." "I prefer to think of it as providing you with plausible deniability," Gear replied, unrepentant. Despite herself, Elena laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed in the small room. "I should throw you in the brig." "You could," Gear acknowledged. "But then who would fix the mess hall replicator?" Their banter was interrupted by the ship-wide comm system. "Captain, park to the bridge. Priority message from Command." Elena and Gear exchanged glances. "We'll continue this discussion later," she said, already moving toward the door. And Gear, not a word of this to anyone else. By the time Elena reached the bridge, the atmosphere had changed palpably. The usual resigned lethargy had been replaced by tense alertness. "Report," she commanded as she took her seat. "Command has detected unusual movement among the Draken fleet." Lieutenant Ramos answered, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. "They've changed course and formation. It doesn't match the patterns expected for a peace delegation." Elena leaned forward. "Show me." The main screen lit up with a real-time image of space near the treaty coordinates. What should have been a small honor guard of Draken vessels had expanded into what could only be described as an armada, at least 50 warships each, bristling with weapons. "Have they provided any explanation?" Elena asked, her voice carefully controlled. "None, Captain," replied Communications Officer Wright. "They've maintained radio silence for the past hour." "What are command's orders?" Wright hesitated. "All vessels are to maintain position but prepare for possible hostilities. Specifically for us, and I quote, HMS Ironwill is to withdraw to the peripheral coordinates and await further instructions." Of course, even in a potential crisis they were to be sidelined. "Captain," interrupted Ensign Ortiz from the helm. "I'm picking up a transmission, but it's not coming through official channels. It's being broadcast on an emergency frequency." "Let's hear it," Elena ordered. The audio was distorted, filled with static, but the message was clear enough. "To all Earth Alliance vessels, Draken treaty signing was a ruse. Invasion fleet inbound. Estimated time to engagement 3 hours. May God help us all." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. "Can we verify?" Elena asked finally. Lieutenant Ramos shook her head. "Not definitively, but the fleet movements are consistent with a combat formation rather than a diplomatic envoy." Elena made her decision. "Ensign Ortiz, maintain our current position, ignore the order to withdraw. Lieutenant Ramos, bring all weapon systems online. Officer Wright, continue monitoring all frequencies. And someone get gear up here immediately." As her orders were carried out, Elena couldn't help but think that perhaps this was the moment they had all been waiting for, a chance to prove their worth, to redeem their tarnished reputations. Or perhaps it was simply the final chapter in the Ironwill's inglorious history. Either way, they would face it together. When gear arrived on the bridge, Elena pulled him aside and spoke in hushed tones. "Your resonance module, is it really ready?" "As ready as it'll ever be," he replied. "But Captain, activating it means crossing a line we can't uncross. We may be facing an invasion force, Gear. I think that line is the least of our concerns right now." He nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'll need to monitor it from engineering. The calibrations are delicate, especially the first time." "Go," she ordered, "and Gear make it work." As he left, Elena returned to her command chair, her mind racing through scenarios and options. The Ironwill was outgunned, outmanned and outclassed by the approaching Draken fleet. By all logical assessments, they stood no chance. But logic had never accounted for the desperation of those with nothing left to lose. "Captain," called Wright, "incoming transmission from command." Admiral Harrison's face appeared on screen, his features tight with stress. "Captain Park, I reiterate your orders to withdraw immediately. This situation is beyond your capabilities." Elena met his gaze steadily. "With respect, Admiral, withdrawing now would leave the civilian vessels vulnerable. The Ironwill may not be much, but we can buy them time to escape." "That is not your decision to make, Captain," Harrison snapped. "I'm ordering you to—" "I apologize, Admiral," Elena interrupted. "But we seem to be experiencing communication difficulties. Your transmission is breaking up." With a subtle gesture to Wright, she had the connection terminated. "That was probably unwise," Captain Ramos remarked, though there was a hint of admiration in her voice. "Noted, Lieutenant," Elena replied. "Now let's focus on not getting ourselves killed in the next 3 hours." The time passed in a blur of preparation. Elena gathered the crew to explain the situation, giving them the choice to abandon ship if they wished. To her surprise and gratification, not a single person took the offer. "We're with you, Captain," said Dr. Nathaniel Patel, the ship's chief medical officer. "Even if this is a suicide mission. Let's try to keep the S word to a minimum, Doctor." Elena responded with a wry smile. "I prefer to think of it as a high-risk opportunity for distinction." The doctor chuckled. "I'll prepare sickbay accordingly." With 2 hours remaining before the estimated engagement, Elena ordered a series of drills to prepare the crew. They practiced emergency maneuvers, weapons targeting, and damage control procedures. The Ironwill might be outdated and undermanned, but they would make the most of what they had. "Captain," Gear's voice came through her personal communicator. "I need you in engineering." When she arrived, she found him surrounded by holographic displays, his fingers dancing across multiple interfaces, simultaneously. The resonance module hummed with power, its blue glow casting stark shadows across his concentrated face. "I've integrated the module with our weapon systems," he explained, without looking up. "In theory, we should be able to calibrate our phasers to bypass Draken shields by matching their frequency." "In theory?" Elena questioned. "We haven't exactly had a chance to field test it against actual Draken technology," Gear admitted. "But the simulations are promising." Elena studied the displays, though much of the technical data was beyond her understanding. "What do you need from me?" "Authorization to divert additional power from non-essential systems," Gear said. "And faith, I suppose." Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've got both. Do what you need to do." As she turned to leave, Gear called after her. "Captain, there's something else you should know. The module doesn't just affect our weapons. It can enhance our shields too, make them adapt to incoming fire. But there's a catch." "There always is," Elena said resignedly. "The first hit will get through, maybe the second too. The shields need to analyze the attack pattern before they can adapt." Elena nodded grimly. "So we need to survive the opening salvo. Understood." With just 1 hour remaining, Elena returned to the bridge to find a transmission waiting from the Draken fleet. "They're hailing us specifically, Captain?" Wright informed her, surprise evident in her voice. On screen, Elena ordered, straightening her uniform. The screen flickered to life, revealing the scaled reptilian features of Admiral Vrax, Supreme Commander of the Draken forces. His amber eyes seemed to glow with an inner light, and his mouth curled in what might have been a smile, though on his alien face it appeared more like a predatory snarl. "Captain Park of the HMS Ironwill," he began, his voice a rasping hiss. "I notice you have not retreated with the rest of your formidable fleet." The sarcasm was unmistakable. Elena maintained a neutral expression. "We're experiencing some technical difficulties with our propulsion system, Admiral. Nothing to concern yourself with." Vrax's scales rippled in what she assumed was amusement. "How fortunate for us. We were concerned we might face genuine resistance. Instead, we are gifted with a derelict vessel commanded by a disgraced captain." So they knew of her past. Elena refused to be baited. "If we're so inconsequential, Admiral, why take the time to contact us at all?" The Draken's eyes narrowed. "Consider it a professional courtesy. Withdraw now, even at reduced speed, and you may yet survive the day. Stay, and you will be the first to witness the might of the Draken Dominion." "I appreciate the warning," Elena replied coolly. "But I think we'll take our chances." Vrax's scales darkened with anger. "Your bravado is misplaced, human. Your vessel is nothing more than a floating relic crewed by the refuse of your fleet. You will be obliterated within moments of our arrival." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Perhaps, but then again, appearances can be deceiving. Safe travels, Admiral." She signaled Wright to cut the transmission before Vrax could respond. "That went well," remarked Ramos dryly. "He underestimates us," Elena said. "That gives us an advantage. Or he was entirely accurate in his assessment, and we're about to be vaporized," countered Lieutenant Daniel Jackson, the science officer, who had remained silent until now. Elena turned to him. "Do you have something constructive to add, Lieutenant?" Jackson hesitated, then nodded. "Actually, yes. I've been analyzing the Draken fleet formation. Their ships maintain a specific pattern, almost like a neural network. I believe they're sharing tactical data in real time." "Which means," prompted Elena, "which means if we could disrupt that network even temporarily, it might create confusion in their ranks." Elena's mind raced with possibilities. "Could Gear's module help with that?" "Possibly," Jackson admitted. "If it can identify and match the frequency they're using for communication." "Get down to engineering and work with Gear," Elena ordered. "We need every advantage we can get." As Jackson left, the ship's sensors began blaring warnings. "Draken fleet dropping out of warp," announced Ramos. 53 vessels heavily armed. They're deploying in attack formation. All hands to battle stations." Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. Ensign Ortiz, evasive pattern Delta. Lieutenant Ramos, target the lead vessel but hold fire until my command. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers carried out their orders. Through the view screen, Elena watched as the Draken ships emerged from warp, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against the starfield. "They're charging weapons," reported Ramos. "Brace for impact," Elena called. The first volley from the Draken fleet struck the Iron Will with devastating force. The ship shuddered violently, consoles exploding in showers of sparks as power surged through overloaded circuits. "Shields down to 40%, Ramos shouted over the blaring alarms. "Gear, now would be a good time for that module to start working," Elena muttered, gripping her chair as another blast rocked the ship. As if in answer, the lights flickered, then stabilized with a blue tint. Through the comm system, Gear's voice rang out strained but triumphant. "Resonance module online. Captain Shields adapting. Now." The next Draken blast hit them head-on, but this time the impact was significantly reduced. "Shields holding at 38%, reported Ramos, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "Whatever Gear did, it's working." "Target their lead vessel," Elena ordered. "Fire at will." The Iron Will's phasers lanced out their beams, pulsing with an unusual blue energy. When they struck the Draken flagship, something unexpected happened. Instead of dissipating against shields, the beams passed through, as if the protective barrier wasn't there. On the view screen, they watched as the Draken vessel's hull buckled under the assault venting atmosphere and debris into space. "Direct hit," exclaimed Ramos. "Their shields didn't stop our phasers." A cheer went up from the bridge crew, quickly silenced by Elena's raised hand. "Don't celebrate yet. We've got 52 more to go." But their initial success had clearly taken the Drakens by surprise. The enemy fleet's perfect formation faltered as they reassessed this unexpected threat. "They're regrouping," observed Ramos. "Changing attack patterns." "Ensign Ortiz, keep us moving," Elena commanded. "Don't give them a stationary target." The young helmsman nodded his hands, flying over the controls as he executed a series of complex maneuvers that would have been impossible for a less skilled pilot. The Iron Will twisted and turned through space, evading the worst of the Draken barrage while returning fire whenever possible. "Captain," came Jackson's voice over the comm, "Gear, and I have identified the frequency the Draken ships use for tactical communication. We can disrupt it, but only for a few seconds, and we'll need to divert power from weapons to do it." Elena didn't hesitate. "Do it." Lieutenant Ramos prepared to target as many vessels as possible the moment their network goes down. "Understood, Captain," both officers replied in unison. Seconds ticked by, the Iron Will continuing its deadly dance among the Draken fleet. Then, without warning, the enemy vessels seemed to falter, their coordinated movements becoming erratic. "Now!" shouted Jackson over the comm. "Fire everything we've got," Elena commanded. The Iron Will unleashed a barrage of phaser fire and torpedoes, each weapon calibrated to bypass Draken shields. The results were devastating. 6 enemy vessels sustained critical damage in the initial volley, their hulls rupturing as the Iron Will's weapons found their mark. "Their network is back online," reported Jackson. "We can't disrupt it again for at least 10 minutes. The module needs time to recalibrate." Elena nodded. "Understood. Keep working on it. Lieutenant Ramos, focus fire on damaged vessels. We need to reduce their numbers." The battle continued, a desperate struggle against overwhelming odds. The Iron Will danced through the Draken formation, striking where possible, retreating when necessary. Gear's resonance module continued to adapt their shields, but each hit still took its toll. "Hull breach on Deck C," reported Wright. "Emergency bulkheads engaged." "Weapons down to 60% capacity," added Ramos. Elena knew they couldn't sustain this fight indefinitely. "Status of the civilian ships." "Most have reached the jump point," Wright answered, checking her displays. "But 3 transports are still vulnerable." Elena made her decision. "We need to buy them more time. Ensign Ortiz, bring us between the Draken fleet and those transports." "Captain," protested Ramos. "That will expose us to concentrated fire from at least 20 vessels." "I'm aware, Lieutenant," Elena replied grimly. "But those transports are carrying over 2,000 civilians. We swore an oath to protect them." No one argued further. The Iron Will swung around, positioning itself as a shield between the remaining transports and the oncoming Draken vessels. The enemy response was immediate and brutal. Multiple beams struck the Iron Will simultaneously, overloading the adaptive shields and tearing into the hull. "Shields failing," shouted Ramos as consoles exploded around them. "Hull integrity compromised on multiple decks." Elena held tight to her chair, watching as the ship's status indicators turned red across the board. "Gear, we need more power to the shields." "I'm giving it everything we've got, Captain," came the strained reply. "But the module wasn't designed for this kind of punishment." Just as it seemed the Iron Will would be torn apart, Jackson's voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, we've modified the disruption pulse. Instead of targeting their communication network, we can target their shield generators directly." Elena didn't waste time asking questions. "Do it!" For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the Draken vessel's shields began to flicker and fail. "Their shields are down," exclaimed Ramos. "All of them." "Target their weapon systems," ordered Elena. "Disable as many as you can before they adapt." The Iron Will's remaining weapons fired in rapid succession, striking with pinpoint accuracy at the now vulnerable Draken ships. Explosions bloomed across the enemy fleet as weapons arrays and power systems were hit. On the main view screen, Elena watched as the Draken flagship Admiral Vrax's vessel took a direct hit to its bridge section. The massive ship listed to one side, emergency lights flickering along its hull. "Captain," reported Wright, "we're being hailed. It's Admiral Vrax." Elena nodded. On screen, Vrax appeared, his scaled face contorted with rage and pain. Behind him, his bridge was in flames, officers frantically trying to control the damage. "This is impossible," he hissed. "Your vessel is obsolete. Your crew is incompetent. How have you done this?" Elena allowed herself a small smile. "As I said, Admiral appearances can be deceiving." Vrax's amber eyes narrowed. "This isn't overhuman. The Draken Dominion will not be defeated by a single ship." "Perhaps not," Elena agreed. "But today, this single ship has cost you dearly. I'm offering you a chance to withdraw. Take your fleet and leave Alliance space immediately." The Draken Admiral's scales rippled with fury. "You dare dictate terms to me?" "I dare offer you salvation," Elena countered. "Look at your fleet, Admiral. 13 ships destroyed, 21 severely damaged. Your flagship is barely operational. How much more are you willing to sacrifice?" For a long moment, Vrax was silent, his alien features unreadable. Then finally he spoke. "This is merely a setback, Captain Park. We will meet again." The transmission cut off abruptly. "They're powering up their warp drives," reported Ramos, sounding almost disbelieving. "They're retreating." A cheer erupted on the bridge, officers embracing each other in tearful celebration. Elena allowed it for a moment, before raising her hand for silence. "The battle is won, but our work isn't done," she reminded them. "Officer Wright, contact the civilian transports, ensure they make it safely to the jump point. Lieutenant Ramos, maintain weapons lock on the Draken fleet until they're out of range. Dr. Patel, casualty report as soon as possible." As her officers carried out their duties, Elena sat back in her command chair, the adrenaline slowly fading from her system. The Iron Will had done the impossible, face down in Armada, and emerged victorious. But at what cost? "Preliminary casualty reports coming in, Captain," announced Wright, her expression sobering. 12 confirmed dead, 37 injured, 14 critically. Elena closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of each loss. "Ensure the injured receive immediate attention, and arrange a memorial service for those we've lost." "Yes, Captain." The hours that followed were a blur of damage control, medical emergencies, and debriefings. The Iron Will limped towards the nearest starbase, its systems operating on emergency power, and its hull patched with temporary sealants. When Elena finally had a moment alone in her ready room, she allowed herself to truly feel the magnitude of what they'd accomplished and what they'd sacrificed. 12 lives, 12 of her crew who would never return home. Her reflection was interrupted by a chime at the door. "Enter," she called. Gear stepped in, his face streaked with grease and dried blood from a cut above his eye. He looked exhausted, but satisfied. "The resonance module is offline," he reported without preamble. "It burned out during that last maneuver against their shields. It'll take weeks to rebuild if we decide to do so." Elena nodded. "Sit down, Gear. You look like you're about to collapse." He sank gratefully into a chair. "We did it, Captain. We actually did it." "Yes, we did," she agreed softly. "But I can't help wondering, was it worth the cost?" Gear's expression grew serious. "I've been in engineering for the past 6 hours, working alongside people who were strangers to me just yesterday. Do you know what I heard them saying? They were proud, Captain. Proud to serve on the Iron Will. Proud to have fought under your command." Elena felt a tightness in her throat. "We lost 12 of our own today." "And saved thousands more," Gear countered. "Including everyone on this ship. The crews of those civilian transports. The Alliance itself, maybe." Before Elena could respond, her comm system chimed. "Captain Park," came Wright's voice. "Priority transmission from Admiral Harrison." Elena exchanged a glance with Gear. "Put it through." Harrison's face appeared on her desk display. His expression a complex mix of emotions, anger, respect, and perhaps a touch of embarrassment. "Captain Park," he began formally, "I've received the preliminary reports of your engagement with the Draken fleet." "I assume my court-martial is already being arranged?" Elena asked dryly. To her surprise, Harrison shook his head. "Not quite. Your actions while in direct violation of orders have been deemed appropriate given the circumstances." Elena blinked in surprise. "I'm not sure I understand, Admiral." "Neither do I, to be perfectly honest," Harrison admitted. "But the fact remains that you and your crew prevented what could have been a devastating first strike by the Drakens. Intelligence now indicates they had planned to destroy our delegation and then proceed to attack 3 core worlds while we were still reeling from the loss." "So we're not being court-martialed?" Harrison's mouth twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. "On the contrary, Captain. You and your crew are being commended. The Iron Will receive a full refit and upgrade at Starbase 47. And you, Captain Park, are being promoted to Commodore." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "Admiral, with all due respect—" "Save it, Park," Harrison interrupted. "I know we've had our differences. But what you did out there today, that's the kind of leadership the Alliance needs, especially now that we're facing an open conflict with the Draken Dominion." After Harrison signed off, Elena turned to Gear, who was grinning broadly. "Commodore Park," he said, testing the sound of it. "Has a nice ring to it." Elena shook her head, still processing the sudden reversal in their fortunes. "What happens now, Gear? They'll give us a new ship, a proper crew. Will you come with me?" "Are you kidding?" Gear laughed. "And miss whatever insane situation you get us into next? Not a chance. Besides, someone needs to rebuild that resonance module, preferably with official approval this time." Elena smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "I should address the crew." When she stepped onto the bridge minutes later, she found it already crowded with officers and enlisted personnel from all departments. A hush fell over them as she entered. "I've just spoken with Admiral Harrison," she began. "The Iron Will is being given a full refit and upgrade, and all of you, every single person aboard this ship, will be receiving commendations for your actions today." A cheer went up quickly, silenced as she raised her hand. "But more important than any medal or promotion is what we accomplished together. We faced impossible odds. We were outgunned, outmanned, and given up for lost before the battle even began. Yet here we stand." She looked around at their faces, tired, injured, but proud. "Today we proved that it's not the ship that matters, but the people who crew her. The Iron Will was considered obsolete, a relic destined for the scrapyard. Her crew was dismissed as failures and disappointments. Yet, when it mattered most, you all showed the true meaning of our ship's name. Elena stood straighter, feeling a fierce pride in every person before her. From this day forward, no one will ever again underestimate the HMS Ironwill or her crew. We have earned our place in history, not as footnotes, but as the authors of a new chapter in the Alliance's story. She paused, her gaze traveling from face to face. We've lost friends today. Family. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten, nor will it be in vain. We will honor them by continuing to serve with the same courage and determination they showed in their final hours. Another pause, this one heavy with emotion. The road ahead will not be easy. The Draken Dominion is wounded, but not defeated. They will return, and when they do, the Alliance will need every ship, every officer, every enlisted crew member to stand against them. But if today has taught us anything, it's that even the most unlikely heroes can change the course of history. Elena smiled, feeling a newfound confidence in herself and her crew. I am proud, immensely proud to serve with each and every one of you. Together, we have transformed this ship from a mark of shame into a symbol of hope. And together, we will face whatever challenges lie ahead. The response was immediate and overwhelming, a thunderous applause that seemed to make the very bulkheads vibrate. Officers who had once regarded her with thinly veiled resentment now looked at her with respect and admiration. As the celebration continued around her, Elena found herself looking out at the stars through the bridge view screen. Somewhere out there, the Draken fleet was retreating, nursing their wounds, and planning their next move. And somewhere beyond that, countless worlds full of innocent people remained unaware of how close they had come to disaster, or of the unlikely heroes who had saved them. The Ironwill had been given a second chance. Elena intended to make the most of it. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of Starbase 47 watching as the newly refitted HMS Ironwill emerged from space dock. Her sleek hull now gleamed with fresh armor, plating her weapon systems upgraded beyond recognition. But despite the external changes, Elena knew that the heart of the ship remained the same, the crew who had fought and bled together, forged in the fire of an impossible victory. "She looks good, doesn't she?" came a familiar voice from behind her. Elena turned to see Gear, now officially recognized as chief engineer, with a promotion to lieutenant commander. His uniform was as always slightly rumpled, but the insignia on his collar caught the light. "Better than good," Elena agreed. "Though I'll admit I almost missed the rust spots. They had character." Gear laughed. "Don't worry, we'll earn new battle scars soon enough. The Drakens have been suspiciously quiet these past months." "Rebuilding their forces," Elena said grimly. "Intelligence suggests they're preparing for a larger offensive." "Then it's a good thing we'll be ready for them." Gear gestured to a datapad in his hand. "The resonance module has been officially approved by Alliance R&D. They're fitting similar systems to every ship in the fleet. We've changed the game, Commodore." Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and apprehension. The war with the Draken Dominion was just beginning, and the battles ahead would make their first encounter seem like a skirmish by comparison. "You know," Gear said thoughtfully, "when I first came aboard the Ironwill, I thought it was the end of my career. A punishment for daring to think differently." "And now," Elena prompted. He smiled. "Now I realize it was the beginning of something far greater than I could have imagined. Sometimes, the most important journeys start in the most unlikely places." Elena returned his smile, thinking of how far they had come, and how far they still had to go. "Well," said Engineer, "now shall we go see what our ship can really do?" Together, they walked toward the shuttle bay, ready to rejoin their crew, and face whatever challenges awaited them among the stars. The Ironwill, once mocked, now legendary, waited to carry them into history once more. No one would underestimate her again,